Hello, good evening, everyone. Today is World Cats Day, so happy best wishes to all the cats of the world. It's also the day we are launching the MIER Conversations series for the first time. Sorry, we are experiencing some technical difficulties. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. The series was designed to ensure that, to enable rather, our experts, economists or other scientists, social scientists that come and work with us on economic and other related issues to articulate their views to a ordinary public and where normally they only talk to other fellow scientists or economists, and also present it to quite knowledgeable audiences, especially in respect of policy matters. But the public gets it, its news or these facts and results of research based on published through the media, social media, as well as normal traditional media, by journalists who are of course trained in their vocation, but sometimes have to articulate or rather have to interpret cut expert views that may not be their normal daily diet of reporting. So in that context, while they are also assigned specifically to the economy or business, so we arranged this series so that these experts that work with us or are working elsewhere in government or business or in academia to present views and discuss in a more relaxed conversational way using maybe better articulated ideas and words and not so much jargon, so that the ordinary folks can understand very serious economic matters that impinge on all of their lives. So tonight, to start off our series, I have asked our principal research officer, our senior research fellow, Dr. Nambiar, Shankaran Nambiar, to talk about issues that he had been writing about in various columns, including The Edge, and have published 3 books on these articles and various topics. And the latest book is the one published also by Gerak Budaya, Malaysia, an Economy at the Edge of Transformation. They have a lot of little blurbs written on those who have reviewed or have volunteered to get their views printed. I want to just read what I wrote, which is also printed in the back of the book. A wide-ranging discussion of the economic issues leading up to GE14, predicating the same questions facing the new PH government, from the debt crisis created by the 1MDB debt debacle to macroeconomic imbalances and geo-economic challenges, and the prospect of economic transformation. An informative economic buffet for the new ministers and their advisors to chew on. So it is a thin book, very legibly written, covers as many interesting issues of the day. And this is a weekly publication, is that correct?
Yes, roughly.
And as I would just leave it to him to raise some of the issues as along my questions. The first being, to kick off the conversation, you don't realize that today is Cats Day, right?
No, I didn't know.
You don't have cats?
I didn't know. not particularly fond of cats.
Okay. Anyway, we don't talk economics to cats, so it's all right. It says, an economy at the edge of transformation. When you choose the subtitle for your book, what do you have in mind?
I think we've been going through perhaps a decade of rather mixed results. A lot of it was from an economic point of view not particularly satisfactory. There was a great deal of discontent among the public on the way the economic indicators were going and how it impinged upon them.
Okay.
And I thought that with the new government, there was this brilliant opportunity to achieve some kind of transformation or to work towards some kind of transformation. So for me, it's as if you could visualize it as a person, an individual being at the edge of a cliff. And there is this possibility of leaping into the future or
Crawl
sinking.
along the edge.
Crawl along the edge,
Yeah.
that'd be bad. We're still sinking into oblivion.
Okay.
And so being at the edge metaphorically would stand for, would mean being at this very prized juncture.
Yeah. One of the issues or critical at that point, in fact, leading up to the GE14 election, was the issue of rising cost of living. And the GST under the PH manifesto was one of their main pillars. And that was the first they did in the first 100 days. Obviously, this is a popular decision or a popular campaign point. Do you think this was a good decision? I mean, a good thing to do, have abolish the GST?
I'm not very sure about the GST.
You are not clear on it?
I'm not.
But basically, it was supposed to replace the SST.
It was.
Which was earlier.
It was.
And of course, 166 countries had adopted the GST.
Which doesn't necessarily mean that the GST was the best
way to go
system,
forward.
the best way to go forward.
Okay.
But it definitely is comprehensive. It covers a wide range of the population. It is a good way of checking on the trail of money. It's a good way of including migrant workers into the tax basket. So it has a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
I would have wished for the government perhaps to have had a closer look at the GST, probably tweak it. And I think the decision to get it out of the way and replace it with the SST.
Well, it was a popular decision,
Yes.
because then it sort of brought down the last government.
I think the present government felt bound by that declaration. It was part of the manifesto, so they felt bound by it. And perhaps they could have re-looked at it, examined it, seen how they could have tweaked it rather than hurriedly replace it with the SST.
Yeah, I think that's correct, because basically the notion that you have an indirect tax that is much broader based would enable you to maintain, so long as you maintain neutrality on the part, there is some neutrality with respect to. So
I think the big problem the government consequently faces is this shortfall, this gap, and how they're going to fill that gap. One good thing that's probably happened for the government is that the prices of oil haven't been too weak, and that to some extent helps it. Yeah. But going forward next year, how they're going to handle it might be a little bit more of a problem.
Yeah, they start off almost like a 20 billion hole to make up through a revised SST. Okay, of your nearly 30 articles published in this third volume of your columns, what would be the topic that caught your eye most in terms of the issues of the day?
I think one of the areas that I have a little bit more of a preference for is on trade issues and their impact on geo-economic questions.
That means that the China-US trade war is of particular relevance.
Definitely.
What is your take on that?
I think there are a couple of dimensions to it. It's interesting that you raised it. I think one of the notable issues is the fact that the Prime Minister has done sort of a turnaround on it. Part of his on his campaign trail, he seemed very strongly to very strongly question Chinese investment and the rest of it.
Yeah.
And he seems to have relaxed on that position considerably.
Was that a tactic that is to just sort of almost zeroize the new government and then take off on maybe their own tack? But you say that they have come around to, in fact,
Yes.
more
Yes.
rapprochement with China. And this is what is your opinion? A good thing, especially in relation to the Belt and Road Initiative that the Chinese is promoting.
I don't think that any investment or any trade with China is necessarily bad by itself. There are, of course, implications, geopolitical implications, the question of being aligned to China, the US, or not being aligned. But I think that's given the tension between the US and China and the reasons why it has emerged, it's quite clear that this kind of tension is going to be not something that's going to be resolved in the next year, next 2 years. It's definitely going to be prolonged. And it's probably going to be the new Cold War.
Yeah, okay.
And yes, given that position, given that situation, as I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad decision, so long as it's well considered and so long as it's grounded on solid economic reasons.
So basically, it is at the moment an economic war. Do you see the possibility that it might escalate into something more dangerous?
I think it being an economic war is bad enough.
Yes.
Because you can see it developing along different dimensions. That you could have a continual process of retaliation, counter-retaliation, and an escalation, which would spiral downwards, and that definitely is not going to benefit the global environment.
Yeah.
That's on one hand.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, aside from the trade retaliation, you could also have a currency war, and that's probably going to be more worrying.
Yeah. You, in your book, wrote quite a lot on labor market issues and the issues of labor market segmentation, the foreign labor situation, the discrimination against different ethnic groups, as well, both ways. Is that an issue that's worth exploring even further?
I think definitely the labor market is extremely important part of
so going
what
forward,
is happening.
beyond, say, the minimum wage, what else can we do to improve the labor market?
Yes, you have to. I mean, I thought the minimum wage was a good thing. Good thing insofar as it would help to, with technology upgrading. So if it works as an incentive,
As improves the productivity,
Pro-
and therefore,
as it- yes,
then
exactly.
Then we can have higher wages.
yes.
Okay.
So it would have to be tied with technological sophistication.
Yeah.
It would have to be tied with increasing productivity.
Yeah.
And if the minimum wage achieves these things, that would be a great way to go forward.
You know, of course, that the minimum wage is only a first step. Basically, you want to move as along with cost of living rising. You want to achieve a living wage. That living wage is way ahead or way above the minimum wage, and that's one of the key issues in labor market policy that will have to be faced at some point. But let me ask this question, because this has been debated in the last government through the NEAC and so on, that we might have to introduce an Equal Opportunity Act, or Equal Opportunity Act meaning an employment act that does not discriminate and protects the rights of the women for equal compensation for equal work, the issues of the informal sector, what kind of insurance they can gain, and so on. So the different forms of social protection, but first must be this act where people can then seek redress through an Equal Opportunity Act. Is that a feasible idea?
I think that's something that we'd have to work to, and I think it's very much in line with achieving developed country status.
Yeah.
And you can't measure or claim to be developed countries solely on one indicator, which is your income. And I think it have to cover all these things: equal participation in the labor market, non-discrimination of women, not having children in the labor market, and the rest of it.
Okay.
So I see it as I mean, the minimum wage is, as you pointed out, perhaps the first step, but it would have to work towards a more inclusive labor market.
We have a research project on high wage economy to see how technological deepening and the participation of small and medium scale enterprises and adoption of new technology and innovations, including the big boys, will improve productivity and allow us to catch up. Tell us something about your understanding of the Tiger research project that we have introduced. Tiger meaning technologically based industrialization for growth and economic transformation. You are involved in that, and you think we are going in the right direction?
I think couple of chapters in the book have touched on this question of technology and technology as being a way to move forward.
And innovation.
And innovation too.
Yes. But you think, well, obviously we are at the brink or at the edge, meaning that we have done not enough. We need to do more of that. And we are talking here in MIER about the 7 leapfrog technologies to achieve developed status and catch up with the rest of the developed world. So
maybe Tan Sri, before I answer your question, you might like to elaborate a little bit on the 7 projects that you've just mentioned.
Oh, yeah. So the 7 leapfrog projects are essentially technologies that we think, and we are doing the studies and doing the impact research on how it will affect the Malaysian economy. And this is the transformation projects that we have entitled as the Crouching Tiger strategy. One of them is the 5G, for instance. The national rollout of 5G will change the landscape of communications, telecommunications, media, and so on, and as well as IoT and other developments that are needed for Industry 4.0 to catch on. Many foreign investors, or few foreign investors, have used this, besides skills, have used this as their reason for not able to invest in Malaysia or build their factories in Malaysia, because the communications is not yet up to standard in terms of speed or coverage or whatever, and 5G has got that potential. That's one example. The other is, of course, the electric car. Everybody's talking about it, and many people are jumping into this thing because it is actually a global phenomenon, and you can participate as early as possible so that you don't become a latecomer and therefore have to catch up with others. That opportunity is not yet exploited by, in other words, it's still a blue ocean rather than a red ocean issue. That's the electric car. The solid state hydrogen is another way of making the storage of hydrogen as a very prolific source of energy, together with fuel cells, batteries, as against ion lithium batteries for the current electric car. There is the hydrogen car, for instance, which will be based on solid state. But the issue has always been how to store the hydrogen, either in gaseous form or you under pressure you turn it into a liquid form. So that's this solid state technology is something that was brought to us as a possibility of revolutionizing the whole energy scene in relation to factories, electric cars that are hydrogen cars, hydrogen-based trains, and so on. So this is something that we are also exploring. And the other 4 are essentially agricultural technology issues. There will be a talk on the use of microorganisms to regenerate the earth and the soil for purposes of growing different crops and so on. At the same time, growing under a dome so that you can create different climatic conditions and not rely only on Cameron Highlands to produce those crops that are then exported, not just to us, but also exported to Singapore and so on. Now we can produce those under a dome, agro-dome, with robotics and other big data issues or ways of farm management. and crop selections and crop fertilization and so on, so that we can bring more, reduce the import of food, grain and so on, and therefore increase our food security. So that's a fourth. There are others that are including hyper-speed freight trains, and then they call the Hyperloop, that is invented by Elon Musk in the US. We also want to do a test track here that might be useful for us to create a land bridge and reduce the distance between Port Klang and Port Kuantan, which is on both sides of our peninsula, to about half an hour instead of 4 hours or 7 hours, depending on road traffic. So that will make us a small nation that is with maximum connectivity in terms of transport of goods and products. And then the lastly is there is a project that we are working on in FinTech, financial technology, that has to do with the use of gold, as the Prime Minister Tun Mahathir had in his earlier term introduced the Gold Dinar project for Malaysia, but couldn't get that implemented. But now with technology, especially information technology, there's a possibility of achieving his goal by using technology to trade in value associated with gold. Now, so that's basically some of the issues that we are raising in this context, including how to turn biodiesel, or we have a biodiesel policy, B10 or something like that. But we are also studying biojet fuel, which is involves some kind of hydrogen reaction with palm oil, and therefore create a new demand for palm oil rather than just for food production and downstream and so on. So these are, we think, areas or technologies that will change the economic landscape and enable, with government support, government incentives in the right direction, we would be able to achieve the transformation that you are hinting at in your book. Coming back to your book, if that is enough to explain what I'm saying about these 7 leapfrog technologies, the thing in your book, you didn't seem to touch enough on, to me at least, on environmental issues. Is that because you're not familiar with that, or is it by choice that it is not as important, you think?
No, before I come to environment and why I didn't touch on it, I'd just like to add a little bit to what you've been saying. I think I've alluded to the need for technology and adopting more sophisticated technology. Obviously, we all know that Malaysia is neither here nor there. It neither has the labor advantage, nor does it have the technology advantage. So
why is that, you think? Why is that?
I think we've had this process of deindustrialization from, I don't know, the mid-90s or late 90s, and it has been continuing. And at some point there was a shift towards services, but unfortunately even services are not really
technology-based
or knowledge-based. Neither do we export a lot of our services, so we're not really in a niche market, even a global niche market, even as far as the services sector.
Not even in games and game and construction. I thought we are quite good at that.
Oh, I'm not
in IT at least,
sure about.
Yeah, but anyway, there are a few pioneers around. But we need more of these.
I think we need, if we are going into services sector, we need more of these industries coming up. And I don't think we have that critical mass which really adds to GDP
so there
or
is
employment generation.
Right. So there is a skills gap. This is what people are also
talking.
There
is. And one
of
the
reasons why.
Need.
That's the second reason why people like Google or Dyson and a few others move to Singapore, because Singapore has all of that connectivities and government support behind them. And we have here, we also signed an MOU recently with Wan Nasir Group, and they are very successful. Wan Nasir is a Kelantanese, born but have lived overseas, because every time they come back, came back to invest in Malaysia, he get turned off by the government officers or state government, whatever, and trying who are supposed to promote and encourage this kind of people. Is that an issue? Or that skills is one of the issues that prevent them?
Oh, I think skills. I mean, there are 2 points from rising from what you've been saying. One is that we need to reinvigorate industrialization.
Yes.
And
right.
I think the 7 projects.
No, some of the support staff were trying to gesture at me. That's what.
Okay.
Even normal television, we have been cut off, or there's a commercial break or something. But this is online.
No,
okay, go ahead.
No, I thought that the way the officials in state governments are trying to cut off one Nasir, in the same way the audience here is trying to cut you off.
Yeah. No. Okay, go ahead. All right.
So yes, we need to relook at reinvigorating industrialization.
Okay.
And as you pointed out about one Nasir and moving into high-tech areas, I think that also needs urgent attention, and we also need a more conducive government environment, and hopefully through your offices.
Let me do a break like in normal TV broadcast. They have a break. You have been talking to Dr. Nambiar Shankaran, who is a senior research fellow in MIER, and I am afraid I didn't do the right thing to introduce myself in the first instance. I'm Kamal Saleh, chairman of the MIER. Okay, let's continue.
Okay.
And the commercial part gone. All right. But I do want to say that the book is already available in the shop.
It is.
So you can buy it anytime. Okay. So now, just to go on a bit more.
Oh, but before you go on, Tan Sri, skills gap.
The skills gap.
I think that's urgent. It's an urgent issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
And it's tied up with the question of.
I have a robot that just handed me your book. So this is one of the advances technology that you're looking for.
You didn't mention robotics.
I did, I mentioned robotics.
You did?
Yes. Okay. This book actually has got a whole range of very interesting things. I when I started reading, I couldn't put it down, but this post-TPP dilemma.
Oh, I think that's one of the things. Maybe, Tan Sri, you'd like to show the book to our viewers.
Oh, see, I don't even know where the camera is. That shows how professional we are in this MIER. Okay, go on. Yeah. So, so what about this TPP that now we are talking about? Without US, we have another 11 trying to come to an agreement. Malaysia has not yet signed to it. At the same time, there is RCEP, the regional, what do you call? With China involved in that, which is probably as relevant, because in the PPA there was no China then. What do you think of this? Which direction should we go, or we should emphasize TPP or ATP? What is it called? The new acronym is
CPTPP.
CPTPP, yeah, minus the US, and then also about RCEP. Where should be our balance, or we should be in both?
I think without doubt we should be in RCEP.
Okay, because of China.
Not only because of China, but because we'd like to emphasize ASEAN centrality.
Yes.
So I think we should look at the region first, and this is the region where all the action is going on and expected to go on the next 10 years. So I think our first target should of course be RCEP. And yes, as you've mentioned, RCEP has the advantage of having two of the most populous countries in the world, two of the countries with the biggest markets, India and China.
Yes.
So the obvious advantages to it. And of course it also has Japan, Australia, New Zealand. So there's a lot that can be reaped by being in
that
RCEP.
last point about the inclusion of India and China is very interesting, because it triggers in my mind a study that was done by Deutsche Bank research about where are the growth potential in the world among countries, and they had an equation that covered population, of course, important, but the scale issue was then reduced to population per capita, and then of course growth rates. And then there is a special factor that was included into that analysis, which is called openness and connectivity, and which means that Malaysia, so this is why in that context, the way the thing was that analysis was done, it turns out that China was the top, given those factors in the equation, and India was second, and you guess what country is third? Malaysia. And a small country like ours, because it's so open and it's at the crossroads of so many trade routes and communication, this is why the 5G is part of the problem, and ports, facilities, and so on that we have to deal with. So imagine Malaysia is third amongst after China and India in terms of the potential for growth, not because of its size, but because of its openness and connectivity. And this is something that has to be factored in some kind of government policy with respect to maintaining the right model in the context of this new configuration. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the openness and being conducive, providing a conducive business environment, being attractive to foreign investment, absolutely essential ingredients.
Yeah, okay.
The way forward.
This brings then to maybe our last topic of conversation, and that is that in order for us to continue to draw investors from overseas and at the same time promote in domestic investors or people who are in industry, which now, given the uncertainty of succession of leadership, given the fact that there's a lack of direction on the economy, what kind of policies are going to be introduced, except for the term shared prosperity, which is what we have been doing all this while, except not successfully, so that maybe the new government might be able to think of new ways to achieve shared prosperity, 2030s, since we are now 10 years behind, or 5 to 10 years behind our 2020 vision target. But what I'm saying is, so we have to rely, because savings, we have to raise savings, but in the end, we have to rely on foreign investment. But foreign investment are the most notorious in terms of transfer of technology. And of course, unless you have got offset programs, like when you buy arms, aeroplanes or whatever, then with British Aerospace, that kind of thing, you then can get people trained to maintain the aircraft or whatever. But that's not enough in terms of transfer of technology. The innovation must spill over to the whole country, and even small and medium scale economy with internet, they can in fact produce and advertise and market on to the world because of the internet and so on. But the key question is the government must provide the means, the facilities, the support, the incentives, whether it's tax breaks or allowances or grants, in order for companies to absorb this new technology, to go abroad. But our current players are largely still interested more in traditional investment in, say, real estate, or go overseas or to do other things. And like Nasir Group, they have got, it's a multinational almost, and now coming back to develop Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and so on, and trying to come back into Malaysia was a big task, which is ironic. It's just like, profits are not recognized in their own country, kind of thing. And we have lost a lot of talent this way. So the role of the state, this is the issue I'm talking about, institutional role of the state in relation to the market. Both have failed in some ways. And how do you bring about that they can work in symbiosis? Because we are still practicing a mixed economy. We are still a democratically based economy. We don't have a central government that can dictate, even between Singapore and China, and they can still dictate what can be done in the market and so on with a stronger arm than we here because of the nature of our politics. So can you dwell around that kind of issues? Institutional?
I think something that needs to be looked at with some kind of urgency is the model that is being used presently. It seems to be very top-centric, and it has to be more democratic, more decentralized,
yeah.
And
especially Sabah Sarawak in relation to position.
They have to be brought into the picture, and I think this decentralization has also got to work as far as technology is concerned. It can't be the preserve of a few players, and that is where the government has got to play a much bigger role. You can't have Khazanah just looking after a few GLCs.
It's interesting you say government must play a bigger role, when in fact people are saying that government should reduce its role. And one of the reasons why we are not able to do, because also of politics, but it's government's strong hand in the market is the one, like the presence of GLCs in the stock market and its size in relation to the whole economy.
Government should get out of that. It should get out of GLCs in the stock market.
Yeah.
And government should get into more fundamental issues like you have just mentioned.
All the
R&D, innovation, trying to...
This is what Khazanah should have done.
That precisely, rather than buying over hospitals and do something which the private sector could very well have done.
Yeah.
So it should have been looking at projects with long gestation periods, research and development, innovation, disseminating it, getting it at the level of SMEs, etc. And I think that's where the government should be playing a more
especially
active
in infrastructure.
Absolutely.
You have to have such long gestation to recover. That there must be more creative ways of funding or financing this kind of infrastructure projects. And of course, the market can respond to it. But ROI is certainly not that not something that is in the mind of decision makers in the public sector.
That's where the model and the thinking needs a rechange, needs to be re-looked at.
Okay, and there are also political issues. I mean, you got to overcome some of this comfort zone. People must get out of their comfort zone and try things. And when they fail, that doesn't mean that they have failed. I mean, they are not successful. From the failure, they learn and therefore become better to get up and so on. Okay, is there anything else you want to raise? You can now become the interviewer. From your book, I know that you cover so much and there's so many things you can talk some more, but I think we have to bring the session to a close. Is there anything that you want to say?
I think...
Sell your book. Say something nice about your book.
I mean, Tan Sri, at the time when you wrote the blurb, I didn't think that I'd be working for you.
No, I also wasn't thinking at that time, because I only got asked only in April to take over the chairmanship. Anyway, this that, and so why don't you just show to the camera your book, and then I know this is a very nice book. I enjoyed reading it. I didn't read all of it, but I do the part that I like. I mean, I saw the title. Titles are very important. That's why we call Crouching Tiger as our strategy, because to catch people's eye and attention.
Oh, anyway, Tan Sri, beyond nice titles, I've tried to provide equally stimulating content.
Also, and from your conversation with me, show that you do have interesting content to deal with.
Thank you. We cannot see the book from afar.
Oh, you see, the producer is saying. Okay, just I get to you. Yeah, this is the book. All right, enough. Okay. See, we don't have commercial break, so we can't show these things. But this is a commercial break. Yeah. Okay. Well, she's showing it to the camera. I think I have to bring the session to a close. We have spent about 45 minutes on this conversation. I think that's about the length people can stay up, and especially tomorrow is another day before Wukuf. People want to go and sleep and fast and rise in the morning to pray and so on. And a long holiday, so people are going out now. So, but let me tell you that if you miss this online, transmissions, you can look at up our MIER. Look at our MIER. I don't know where the camera is. Look at the MIER. Look up our MIER URL. Yeah, correct. And then it's in the archive. Facebook. It's also in Facebook. It's also in my Facebook, in the MIER Facebook, and a YouTube channel called MIER channel. So good night and happy Cats Day.
Thank you.